Hello. So today we are going to be doing the eyeshadow palette tag that was created by Allie Glines and Samantha March. I have lashes on with my glasses and they're like too big for my glasses, so it's getting very annoying. Okay, let's just dive right in, shall we? Okay, the first one is the newest eyeshadow palette in your collection, and that is this guy right here. It's the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. Did a whole video with this, and I will link that for you if you're interested. I was saying in that video I was never really drawn to this palette, and in that video I say that I probably wouldn't use all of these shades like in the summertime. They are kind of more like deeper for fall in my opinion, but yeah, I'm really liking it so far. It is on par with her other palettes that I have. I have the Sunrise and the Biba, and I think it's on par with those, so I'm liking it so far. Okay, the next one is the oldest palette. So I have two different ones that I wanted to talk about. So this is a quad, so that's why I chose two, because like I don't know if you consider this a palette or not, so I chose this one. But this is the YBF, it's Your Best Friend Amazing Gaze eyeshadow quad. And I use this so much. I still like would probably use this. I just don't reach for it just because I have so many other shadows in my collection now. But yeah, this is pretty old. I would even say it's maybe like 10 years old or something. I don't know when I got it, but it's very old. And then my second, that's actually a palette, is the Master Palette by Mario. This I got in like 2016. My boyfriend got it for me for like our 1-year anniversary or my birthday or something, like some thing. And I used this so much. This was my favorite shade in the palette. It still like is such a good shade. I still use this palette, and I'm definitely keeping it for like sentimental purposes too, but it's so good. I wish they would re-release this because it's such an amazing palette. My most expensive palette is the Natasha Denona Biba palette. It looks like that. This costs $129. The runner-up would be my Pat McGrath palette, which was $125. But yeah, this one is definitely my most expensive. The most affordable palette in my collection, I think, is this one. This is the Revolution Reloaded Iconic Vitality. This was in my Project Pan that I quit. Or not my Project Pan, but my Pan That Palette. I quit my Pan That Palette. I will link that video if you're interested. But yeah, this retails for like $7, so I think this was the most affordable. I like the other ones I had were like $12, $10, that kind of thing, so I think this one's the most affordable. The best like everyday palette for me is this Persona Cosmetics Identity palette, and this is specifically for brown eyes, so that's why I think that I would be able to use this like every single day. It has great mattes. The shimmers are really gorgeous and soft. Like I really like those kinds of shimmers. The mattes are really nice, and they have like purple tones because I love purple tones on an everyday basis. So yeah, this is just a great everyday palette. Highly recommend checking this guy out, especially if you have brown eyes. Okay, the next category is most colorful, and I kind of picked two for this because I couldn't really decide. So I have the Ace Beauty Vintage Dawn palette, and that's definitely a super bright, colorful eyeshadow palette. But I also have the Zodiac 25 color eyeshadow palette from BH Cosmetics, and I feel like if we were just going based off of how many shades are in a palette, the Zodiac has more shades. Like it has a purple, pink, blue, silver, green. You know what I mean? Like there's more shades in here. But this one, to me, when you're comparing the two, this one seems more colorful. So that's why I couldn't really decide. So I just put both in, and you can let me know which one you would have chosen. Smallest palette, this was kind of hard because I didn't want to do a quad, but then I realized I have this guy right here, which is the Naked Cosmetics Trio, and I actually dropped this today and broke the orange shade, so that was fun. I'm not sure what this is exactly called, but it looks like that. They're super pigmented, really bright colors. I do like this palette. I don't really reach for it that often. I just don't wear these like bright shades that often, but I'm really upset because I broke that middle shade. But it did, like, I just pressed it back in with my finger and it was fine. So, but yeah, I think this is my smallest palette because there's only 3 shades in it. My biggest palette is the Jaclyn Hill palette. There's 35 shades in here. This isn't like my favorite palette of all time, to be honest. I just, sometimes it's just really hard to work with. I like the shimmers in here, but the mattes, they're kind of hit or miss. I don't know if I got like a bad version of it or it was just like so overhyped and it just didn't live up to the hype. I mean, it's good. The transition colors are nice. The shimmers are nice, but it's just like not my favorite palette. So yeah, it's my largest though. The next category is the best memory. So I actually haven't watched anyone's videos on the eyeshadow palette tag because I've wanted to do it, but I understand the concept, and that's like, you know, to talk about your eyeshadow palettes. So I haven't really heard anyone's like stories about what they would say about their palettes. So I'm picking 2 different palettes. The first one is the Morphe 35O palette, and I just remember asking for this like December of 2016, maybe, yeah, I think it was December of 2016, and just being so excited to get it because everyone else was talking about it and I just really wanted it, and I have gotten a lot of use out of it. Obviously I hit pan in that shade, but it's just, I don't know, it just kind of signifies that I started my Instagram page and like I was, you know, on trend with other people, you know, who loved this palette. So that's kind of that symbolic. And then this palette, which is the Viseart Paris Nudes, I think it's Paris Nudes, but it's an all shimmer palette. And this palette I bought in IMATS in like 2017 or something. It was my first IMATS I ever went to. It was my only IMATS I ever went to. And I was debating on whether or not to get this palette. And I went with a couple friends, and we went to the convention, and then we went out and we got lunch, and I couldn't stop thinking about this palette, and I was like, I'm going back and getting it. So that just kind of, you know, this palette reminds me of the IMATS and like, you know, I don't know, building my collection and like having that experience. So I really like this palette, and that's a good memory for me. So I think in general, palettes that are worth the hype are the ABH palettes, specifically the Soft Glam palette. I feel like it's very hyped up, and it's your typical like kind of neutral palette color story, but I do think that these shadows are worth the hype. This is probably one of my most used palettes, and it looks most used because her formula is very, very soft. So like when you know, use it a couple times, it looks like you've used it like 25 times. So I definitely think that this palette is worth the hype. It's beautiful. It blends really nicely. I like the shades. It's great for every day. Definitely worth the hype in my opinion. The next category is not worth the hype, and I looked through my collection and I couldn't find anything that I felt like was super, super hyped up, that I bought it because it was hyped up and then it didn't live up to my expectations, you know what I mean? So the only palette that I could really pull is this Rose Play All Day by Physicians Formula eyeshadow palette. I don't necessarily think that this was like hyped up in any way, but it's just like really, it's not great. I don't really like the shimmers. The mattes are okay. The pan size is really, really tiny. It's like $17 or something, like kind of insane. But yeah, I use this maybe like once or twice. It's just like not really worth the money. I would pass on this. I did a whole review on it. It's pretty, but like I just never reach for it now. So next one is favorite palette from a favorite brand. And this I also didn't know which one to pick because I do like ABH shadows, and I already talked about the Soft Glam. I already talked about Mario palette. So I think the next one would be the Dream Street palette by ColourPop and Kathleen Lights. Clearly, I've loved this palette a lot. The only shadows I really, really don't reach for are the blues, but it's nice having them as an option in this palette because it does like kind of break things up and it makes it a little bit more unique. But the rest of the shadows are perfect for like every day. They are like Vesna colors, as my boyfriend would say. So I just think that this is a really great palette, and I really love ColourPop as a whole, so that's why I chose it. Okay, and then my most used palette is probably the Studio Makeup On The Go eyeshadow palette. It's actually probably the Mario palette, but I already put that in a different category. But yeah, this one I used so often. I still use it. I love it. I love it so much. But I mean, obviously I hit pan there. And all of these shades look really, really pretty on my eyes, in my opinion. I just really like purple eyeshadows on brown eyes. So yeah, this is one of my most used palettes in my collection that I will continue to hold on to. So that concludes this video. I will leave the products that I can linked down below, and the categories if you want to, do this, tag yourself. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and thank you guys so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!